Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack, back again to bring you everything you need to know about Operation Floodgate. If you're enjoying these kind of videos, be sure to like and subscribe so we can hit our 100,000 subscriber goal by the end of the year. We'll start up with the bosses first, and then we'll talk about priority trash mobs and routing at the end, and check the description for an easy press W route for your Mythic Plus. Starting it off, Big Mama, you have to go around the facility and get into these weapon stockpiles in order to fight the third boss, and you have to kill the first two fights first before you can get to those stockpiles. So Big Mama is a large mech surrounded by 4 drones, and she patrols around this area and cannot easily be reset at all. These drones do like light shoot damage, and then they kind of charge and you can see the direction they're going and the damage they're going to deal. You ideally want to find a balance between cleaving them and prioritizing to kill them as best as you can. The reason being is when Big Mama reaches max energy and the ads are not killed, then she immediately puts up a shield onto herself and starts pulsing damage onto the group, which is very nasty. Once all the ads are actually killed, the boss casts Jumpstart and starts pulsing AoE damage and activates a vulnerability phase and takes more damage at that time. The boss will also cast Sonic Boom at a player, firing a sonic disc at one player, pushing them back and silencing them. So make sure you stand back from the boss and then run away from the disc as it comes at you. Also keep an eye on these drones, as they will have a cast that's interruptible that will knock players back. It's called Maximum Distortion. It does a lot of damage and it's very easily stopped by just having somebody get a kick onto it. The second boss is the Demolition Duo. Geezle will cast these quick shots on players, dealing big priority damage, and also be casting this kinetic explosive gel. And both of those things can target the same person, so be ready to dump lots of single target healing into whoever is targeted by the gel. This gel is dispellable, and when it is dispelled, it's going to pop for additional damage. You want to use this pop to clear out any of the bombs around the room. You can walk over, walk through, whatever with these bombs, and they will not explode. You can only clear them by having the explosive gel get dispelled on them, or using big old Bront the Ogre to charge through them. He is going to use this barreling charge, and he's going to target allies 3 times, and each time he can run through bombs, they get cleared, knocked up into the air, and they're no longer part of the encounter. If they go off, they deal heavy damage into a big dot that could wipe your group. That kinetic explosive gel goes out twice. Once before the charges go out, just as the bombs spawn, and then once after all the charges have completed. So if there's any excess bombs remaining after Bront's charges, you can then just pre-position around a bomb, get the dispel go off onto the right player, and then you'll be able to clear those bombs no problem. Keep in mind, the boss is in rage when one of them dies, and Bront has a regular wallop attack throughout the encounter that smashes the tank and will also cleave within around like 4 or 6 yards of the tank. So make sure you're not standing on the tank, and if you hit an enrage point, just make sure the tank isn't moving all over the place. After the boss, it'll open a gate where you can unlock the stockpile of cache of weapons. You want to just get that detonated. And there's also a rocket launcher on the corpse of the boss that you want to make sure you click on, because then you're going to use it to destroy the Zeppelin that's patrolling around the room and dropping these like fire circles in the swamp area. This will lead you to Swampface, which is dealing constant ticking damage. There's also going to be Sludge Claws, which is a nasty tank buster, and it procs a heal absorb on the tank, meaning they're going to need a lot of support. Players are tethered to one partner periodically on the encounter. If you move too far away, it yoinks you back to your partner, which could be really nasty as you're dodging the boss's frontals. So make sure you're moving together. Most of our groups in PTR were moving to the left all the time, no matter what, and just kind of going in a circle clockwise around the boss. Around every 30 seconds, the boss will cast Awaken the Swamp, which deals really heavy damage onto the party and spawns waves that players need to dodge. They deal a little bit of extra damage, but they also push players back, which means you could get yoinked away from your buddy and then put into some really nasty positions. Rather than worrying about who your partner is, try to make sure you're just moving as a group clockwise around the room and dodging together while rotating either defensives or big healing cooldowns around every 30 seconds for the Awaken the Swamps. The final boss of the Floodgate is Geezle Gigazap, and he spawns a lot of puddles around the room periodically, and every minute he will then start his turbocharge cast. He begins it at the start of the fight and it goes every minute. He will push out some lightning lines you need to dodge and just pulse big AoE damage. After that, you have to deal with the Gigazaps. It targets 2 players, and then there's a circle that spawns around their location. If it overlaps any water puddles, it'll electrify the water puddle, and if a player stands in it, then they will get stunned and take huge damage. Also, later on in the encounter, you have to deal with the leaping sparks that target players and kind of bounce towards them periodically. The only way to get rid of it is to find a non-electrified puddle, kite the spark into that puddle, and then you'll electrify it. Keep in mind, you can walk through non-electrified puddles as long as you do not have the Gigazap debuff on you, or as long as nobody else is electrifying it with a leaping spark of their own, which would then instantly stun you and probably kill you. The most important time to use defensives is going to be for the Gigazaps that happen just before the turbo charge. So you're going to have huge ticking damage on 2 players, and then it's instantly going into huge AoE damage. Make sure you're using the defensives for the Gigazap to mitigate as much of the damage as you can, and then it'll bleed over into the turbocharge AoE, which the healer needs to be prepared for. As I mentioned at the start, there's a lot of priority trash in this dungeon, so while you have to go around the room, and you can always check our MDT route in the description below, while you go around the room, you have to fight a couple different mini bosses and like priority trash mobs to clear out these piles of stockpiled weapons. You can no longer have stealth Mindsu type tech to clear out these stockpiles, because whenever you activate them, they kind of spew out small bombs, which will damage enemies and then pull them to you and take you out of stealth and everything. So you can't really do that to get out all these clears. You have to actually fight the trash. The Shredders is one of the most deadly mobs that they have in the dungeon, and they cast Shredation, which basically spawns saw blades at your feet, and you need to be pre-moving about like half a second before the cast ends, so you can more easily get out of these Shredder lines and be spread so you don't spawn Shredders on anybody else. Then the Shredder is going to start casting Flamethrower and just kind of turret around the room the entire time, blasting flames all over the place. You'll also have to fight at least 1 Blood Warper as they protect one of the stockpiles. They're like these nasty panda blood mages that stack a negative heal absorb on you and deal a lot of damage with warped blood. They are absolutely a priority kill, and you're often going to fight them with a bunch of inspectors, which will jump behind a player's location and then cast a frontal. So make sure you have a lot of stops and crowd control ready for those when you fight the Blood Warpers, so you can just kind of tunnel down the Blood Warper and kill it as fast as you can. Around the swamp, you're going to find a lot of Architects. And these guys are going to nail players to the floor, which is a nasty bleed, and it's going to root them in place. They also are going to go into a rapid construction where they build this like shelf for themselves and reduce all their damage taken. So you need to destroy the shelf and then prioritize the Architect down before it builds another shelf and keeps dealing crazy single target damage. In the swamp itself, you have to deal with divers that cast Harpoon, which will drag players in, and they also cast Seaphorium Mines, which if a player steps on it, the explosion is actually much larger than the actual radius of the bomb itself. So you might have to be within 2 yards of the bomb to activate it, but it explodes within like 10 yards or something, so you can kind of get everybody killed with the mine. As a tank, kite away from those whenever you possibly can. The bombshell crabs you usually don't want to pull at the moment because they stack up a really nasty dot onto the entire group when they are killed. Crocodiles are pretty low percentage, but they're free because all they do is stack a healing down on the tank, and they're pretty easily kiteable, so you don't have to worry about them too much. Before you fight Swampface though, you have these disturbed kelp mobs, which can be really nasty. They channel jettison kelp onto players, which does a lot of ticking damage and hits like every 0.2 seconds or something like that. They attack very fast. They need to be stopped, and they also need to be interrupted from the rejuvenating algae, which you can also purge because it puts up a healing buff on the casting kelp. After you defeat Swampface, you have to fight Bubbles, and you might be able to skip Bubbles, but for this, we'll just say that you're gonna fight it. Bubbles spawns bubbles on player locations, and if you step into these bubbles, you take obscene amounts of damage. These bubbles also like to shift and move around a little bit. Tanks can clear it, but it deals obscene amounts of damage, so if you have an immunity, run through it, great, clear some space, because you don't have a lot of room. And then he's gonna cast Backwash like every 20 seconds or so. It stacks up a dot on players, deals huge amounts of damage, and you're going to need a lot of healing to make sure you muscle your way through this mini boss. It is insanely nasty. Just keep in mind, you can really easily run out of space, so you might want to pull the Architects off to the side first so you have more room to deal with Bubbles. Up to you on that one. Some of the final mobs you have to go against are the electricians. You never want to pull more than 2 electricians at a time, and that's because they put up these magic dots on players called overcharge. If you do not dispel the overcharge debuff, it's going to stun that player for 5 seconds. And when you have 2 of them out, they don't always go out at the same time. They usually stagger a little. So if you just keep on dispelling on cooldown, you will clear them. But you have to make sure that you're always clearing the lowest duration one so that nobody is going to end up getting stunned, because you also have a lot of jump starters in most of the electrician pulls. And the jump starters do huge, unavoidable AoE damage, and they spawn a ton of lightning circles on the group. So if somebody's stunned, they're almost certainly going to die. That's everything you need to know to get started with Operation Floodgate, and make sure to like and subscribe as well, because we're going to have more updates coming for special tech as we discover it. Thank you so much for watching, and huge thank you to our patrons for making all of this content possible. If you want to join them, check them out in the description down below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch y'all next time.